This week on Writers, Inc.
So I don't do like a chapter by chapter outline at all. I can't do that. Like my brain doesn't work. As an editor, I can oversee you doing that, right? I can help you do that. I can't do that for me. So I usually do like a 4 to 6 page treatment, and I write the epilogue first. All my books have an epilogue. I write that first. So once I know where that story ends, I can go back to the beginning and just write until I get to that point, and then I know I'm done.
J.K. Rowling was nearly homeless when she wrote the first Harry Potter book. Stephen King penned Carrie in a small desk wedged between a washer and dryer. James Patterson worked in advertising and famously crafted the Toys R Us theme song long before becoming an author. Join New York Times bestseller J.D. Barker and a panel of industry powerhouses as they pull back the curtain on some of the world's most prolific authors. Where did they start? What is their process? The biggest names in publishing all have origin stories, all have tips and secrets. What does it take to consistently top the bestseller lists and become a household name? Get your notepad out. School's in session. This is Writers, Inc.
Hi, it's Christine Daigle.
Patrick O'Donnell.
Kevin Tumlinson.
And I'm JD Barker. Welcome to Writers, Inc. So school started this week, and everybody in my house is sick.
Of course.
Including me. I feel like in elementary school, they like stand at the door and like maybe spit in each other's mouths, or they all lick the same railing, or I don't know what.
Ebola lollipops at the door as you're walking in.
Yeah, or maybe it's a teacher. Maybe she just coordinates something just to clear out the classroom so she can, get the rest of the week off. But yeah, within the first week, like every other kid in the school was sick, and now all us parents are sick, and it's just a cold. It's not COVID. We're not dying from the COVID, but
Yay.
Yeah. Just enough to remind me where I had the Advil cold and sinus hidden away in the drawer.
Nice.
Good.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's up with you guys? I heard there's AI news, Kevin.
Oh, there's AI news. If JP were here, he'd be drinking.
Yes, he would.
And also taking a drink at the AI news. So yeah, Amazon. This is in our official news for the day, but Amazon just released a new single has dropped from Amazon regarding AI and their policies. I'm mostly pulling this together from a bunch of screenshots and rumors, so bear with me here. But Amazon says, we require you to inform us of AI-generated content, text, images, or translations when you publish a new book or make edits to and republish an existing book through KDP. You are not required to disclose AI-assisted content. We distinguish between AI-generated and AI-assisted. So I did have that wrong, but they gave two definitions. AI generated says we define AI generated content as text, images, or translations created by an AI based tool. If you used an AI based tool to create the actual content, whether text, images, or translations, it is considered AI generated in quotes, even if you applied substantial edits afterward. And then AI assisted, they're saying that if you created the content yourself, used AI-based tools to edit, refine, error check, or otherwise improve that content, whether text or images, then it's considered AI-assisted and not AI-generated. Similarly, if you used an AI-based tool to brainstorm and generate ideas, but ultimately created the text or images yourself, this is also considered AI-assisted and not AI-generated. It's not necessary to inform us of the use of such tools or processes. So that's better than the rumors I was hearing before that they wanted you to disclose everything. I think you'd be crazy to disclose that anything was AI assisted. That's Kevin's official take on that.
Yeah, this is honestly better than just the conversation we had 3 minutes ago.
Yeah.
As far as what it was about.
Yeah.
So they're Grammarly, word check, spell check, all those kind of things. They're basically saying that that's totally kosher. They're fine with that. Yeah. It's the copy and paste. Anybody doing that Control C, Control V straight out of ChatGPT, they're the ones that are going to get in trouble here.
Yeah.
What this is leading towards, I really think there's tons of software out there right now to try and catch AI generated content. It uses the AI in order to find it. So it's basically asking itself, did you write this? Which is how it's able to identify, 30%, 60% or whatever is AI generated. I think that's where they're heading with this. Like they're going to have a tool in the background that's going to go through a book when it's uploaded. It's going to check it with one of those tools. If it comes back with some arbitrary percentage that, some little guy in a back office at Amazon out in Washington is going to decide on, then it's going to either be a yay or a nay as far as whether that book moves forward. I think that's where it's leading. I mean, that's where the U.S. Copyright Office is at right now. They're looking at tools, starting to figure out how to check for this when it comes through the front door.
Yeah. The scary part, though, is the false positives. And we've seen that happening because they what was it? The Declaration of Independence was declared AI generated when they ran it through. So hopefully,
yeah, but see that's a horrible
positives.
example, and it's being touted by a lot of people because the AI was trained using the Declaration of Independence. It's a public document. That it was
but there's
trained on.
authors whose books were used to train the AI as well. So what happens if AI decides that a Kevin Tomlinson book is AI generated because it was in the data set? That's what I'm worried about. I'm not really worried about it, but that would be more of a concern to me than any other use case. And I can't imagine Amazon. I mean, come on. We've known Amazon for quite a while now. They don't do benevolent things. Like it's just going to be a situation where you self-identified. Hey, thanks for that. And a year from now, they come up with a whole rule about AI generated content, and you're top of the list to get pulled. Because you voluntarily identified. So, but that's part of their terms of service, by the way. Their terms of service indicate that you will be honest and you will disclose things that they ask you to disclose. So if you're going to publish on KDP, something to consider.
Yeah. That's the scary part, is just that, one day they're just going to pull your stuff down for a false positive and you have no way to fix that. That's my only fear.
I don't know. I mean, I've used some of the software that I mentioned, and like my own stuff that I've written comes back at 2%, 3%.
Yeah.
If I grab something out of ChatGPT and throw it in there, it's 70%, 80%. Like you can see the difference.
Sure.
And that's only going to get tighter, I think. We'll see. Who knows?
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. That's for sure.
Stay tuned.
Keep those bottles ready.
Exactly.
I guess that's another whole argument in that the other side of this. Like, do you want AI to be trained with your writing? Because that's a very valid point. If they're training it on your stuff, then your stuff could possibly flag it. So
yeah, it's changed my mind a little on some of that. Like I was okay with it until we started, until the Chicken Littles started winning the war, and everyone's panicking. I don't think there's any problem with this, with AI learning from us, but I do have a problem with people now penalizing you for AI generated content without some more proof than this AI detector found it. That's to me going to be a problem. So, but hey, there's life as a 21st century author for you.
That's right.
Yeah, right. All right, so that wasn't even in our real news. So what's in the actual news?
The actual news. So first up, U.S. Copyright Office wants to hear what people think about AI and copyright. Here we go with AI again. The U.S. Copyright Office, and I saw this, and I keep meaning to go. This came up while I was at a conference. I keep meaning to go do this, but the U.S. Copyright Office is seeking public input on AI and copyright issues, including how AI should use copyrighted material. The office notes rising applications for AI-generated works, which could influence future copyright policies affecting authors. A recent lawsuit upheld the office's denial of copyright for an AI-generated image, signaling a human requirement for copyright. Lawsuits have been filed against companies like OpenAI for using copyrighted books in AI training, directly impacting authors. We all saw this. We knew this. This was stuff
and I think the comment period is open till like mid-October or something for this. So yeah, if you're an author, if you've got an opinion on this, it doesn't matter where you fall. You should definitely log in there and write it up. The more information they have, feedback that they have from the community, the better.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask, how many times have they asked the public for input like this? I've never heard of something like this before. Have you?
I've never heard of this. Yeah.
It's kind of unprecedented.
I think so. At least in this format.
Yes.
They may have done this like back in the 70s when they kind of overhauled all of IP law.
Maybe, but I mean, in recent days, you never hear anything like that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not even them. Maybe the AI already took over.
Maybe.
Ooh, yeah.
Well, there's a plot for you.
Dun, dun, dun,
Since when does the government care about our opinions?
Yeah. I'm curious how they're going to go through it, though, because it's open to anybody.
With AI. They're going to go through it with AI, Christine.
Yeah, but yeah, it's like, is hearing from just anybody a good move? Like, hearing from the masses instead of experts? Like, how are you?
I heard they hired a guy named Stan who lives in Cleveland. He's gonna go through all these.
Well, come on,
brand new brother printer. He's gonna print them all off and go through one at a time.
Yeah, let's be realistic though. How many people ever actually respond to surveys?
Fair.
You know,
Yeah.
I've skipped like 50 of them this week, just calling services on about various things, you know, like our power company and all that. Man, I skip all of it, even though I have things I would like to say. I skip the surveys.
Are they giving stuff away? Like, do you get a T-shirt or anything if you do it?
Never. No. I would do those.
Yeah. That's where they need to go.
I'm always up for some swag.
See, so it is the first time the government's asking for our opinions, and they obviously haven't asked how to do it right. They need to give away stuff. I feel compelled.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Publishers Clearinghouse. Look how much stuff Publishers Clearinghouse gives away just to get you to fill out that little form.
Exactly.
That's how you do it right.
Moving on. How much have book prices increased since 2019? This is an interesting question to ask. There has been a noticeable rise in book prices, particularly in the YA genre, with new paperbacks nearly costing $16 and hardcovers around $25. Rising costs are attributed to increased production costs and staffing expenses in publishing, although it's unclear how much of this price hike benefits the low-wage editorial and marketing staff. There's been a 7.7% increase in the average price of adult hardcover fiction since 2018, based on top 10 titles from Publishers Weekly. Despite the increases, the article suggests that authors themselves have not seen meaningful advances in earnings, questioning the distribution of benefits from their higher priced books. Have you had an increase in prices? Are your self-published works? Have you made the decision to increase your prices? These questions are from JP, and he wants to know. By the way, neener, JP, I'm reading the news. Sorry, go ahead.
In his defense, he did tee it up pretty nice for you. I mean, it's all laid out.
It's all laid out.
I'm very anal about this kind of thing. I've got a reminder that goes off once a month, and I go into Ingram Spark and all the different places, and I check my prices. I always make sure I'm making at least $2 on profit on each one. So if something changed in Ingram and now I'm at $1.35, whatever, that I tick it up a couple of cents and get it to that $2 mark. So yeah, everything's been creeping up. I think I've had to do this probably 3 or 4 times in the last year, checking it every month. It's like the price of eggs, like every inflation is just kind of, trickling into every little thing. And on the book side, I don't know that we necessarily see it as much as we, might on groceries, some other things. But they're putting it in there. It's funny because I really want to support the independent bookstore, but that's where they're priced the highest. Like you go in there for a hardcover book and that's the most expensive place you're going to buy that hardcover. Then you can walk into a Barnes and Noble, which I guess would be the mid tier. They usually have that hardcover discounted somehow. And then that same hardcover on Amazon is going to be $18 when the local bookstore has it for $29. That's a tough nut to swallow for people, when they are pinching every penny because of the grocery situation, because gas is so expensive. They want to support that local store, but not everybody can anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think any of that's trickling back to the author, right?
Yeah. No. I just ordered a traditionally published adult hardcover this week, and it was $32, and I almost had a heart attack. I think that's the most expensive hardcover. And it wasn't particularly, it wasn't an epic fantasy or anything. It was just a regular hardcover, and I was like, holy smokes, that is expensive. Man.
Yeah. I do see that's one place where indies kind of cut themselves off a little. They undervalue their work when they should be looking at, hey, what does the market say? There's nothing wrong with being competitive, but sometimes indie authors kind of undervalue their work, and they shouldn't be doing that. If it's good, put it up there. Why not?
Yeah, that's my friend Nick Thacker, who should be coming up on an episode at some point. But that's one of the things. It's one of the wisest things I ever got out of him. Actually, was we're not as indie authors when we're writing our books and publishing our books. Pricing wise, we're not competing with other indie authors. We're competing with the whole market.
Absolutely.
Yes. Pub market. And we should, if we're going to go through all the effort of trying to look and feel and operate like those authors in those books, that includes the prices. Yep. I don't particularly like how the pricing model works with ebooks when it comes to traditional publishing. That idea of, this is ridiculous to me to go and see the hardcover is $25, the paperback is $18, and the ebook is $30. That just really burns me. But so I refuse to do that. But we should be looking at the way the industry prices, because that's what the readers are going to be used to.
Well, that's their way of getting on the New York Times list, right? They have to steer all those sales towards the hardcover. New York Times does have a list now, which is print and ebook combined, which is good. It kind of levels that off a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Society of Authors calls use of bad reviews for book blurbs, quote, morally questionable. I'd call this unequivocally questionable. So Society of Authors, SOA or SOA, or however you prefer to pronounce that, criticizes the practice of publishers misrepresenting negative book reviews as endorsements, particularly in the case of Jordan Peterson's book, Beyond Order, published by Penguin Random House. Prominent writers like James Marriott and Joanna Thomas Carr call out the unethical use of their reviews on the book's cover, stating that their negative opinions were twisted to appear positive. Bonnier, is that how you pronounce that? Bonnier Books? Sorry, I only ever see this in writing. So Bonnier Books is developing a best practices guide for using reviews and blurbs, emphasizing that quotes should reflect the original tone and intention of the review. I'm a little torn on this because this doesn't bother me if it happens, but it's. I mean, I understand where they're coming from. They don't want to. What I think is unethical is trying to portray it as so and so endorsed this book in a very positive way. I agree with that part. But, if you write a review and I post it on the book, however it lands is how it lands. So that's my opinion. But I don't think that trying to regulate this with some sort of rules about, the best practice idea of that they should reflect the, quote, original tone and intention. Like, how do you, that's a completely subjective thing.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening here, just so the audience is clear on this, is you get a book that's reviewed in Publishers Weekly or New York Times or wherever, and you get one or two paragraphs of text for that review. And what these people are doing is they're just creatively editing that one or two paragraphs and pulling out a couple of keywords, couple of sentences, piecing things together. You might see an ellipsis, a couple dots, tying things together, things like that, trying to turn it into a positive review. So it's not a lie. It's they're taking the words that they were given and they're representing them in a particular way. The best ones would make incredible politicians because I think it's kind of the same mindset. But this has been going on forever. Yeah. I mean, you can go on Rotten Tomatoes and you're going to see movie reviews where they've done the exact same thing. I mean, this goes back to the beginning of printed word.
Yeah. It did make me laugh, though. It was like there's taking things out of context and then there's like making negative reviews positive. It was like saying this book is like tuna flavored ice cream on a hot day and then this book is hot is like what they're taking from it. So I did laugh. If you want to read the article, there are some funny things that got changed in there.
Well, what really got me is, they singled out this Jordan Peterson guy. Like, I have no idea who he is. I don't know what the book is, but like, how bad does this book have to be for somebody to actually write an article about this practice and point a finger at him, when this has been going on forever?
He's an extremely controversial conservative figure. So that's why they chose him, because he ends up in the news all the time as, he gets accused of being transphobic or gets accused of all kinds of things. So whether or not you believe any of that about him, I do think that it's funny if and it's not him. Let's just be clear about this. He didn't do it. Somebody in the process, the publisher or somebody decided to take these quotes. I kind of like this idea though, like, I'm going to start taking like quotes from like restraining orders and stuff and putting them on my books and making
from restraining orders. How many of those do you have out against you, Kevin? Jeez.
I'm not going to answer that question.
All
it would
right.
incriminate me. Fifth. I plead the fifth.
I wrote a book called The Noise with Patterson, and Stephen King read it and he blurbed it. I think it's the only time Stephen King has ever blurbed a James Patterson book, and we wanted to run with it. But the problem is in Steve's blurb, he used the word zombies, which actually isn't accurate. The book doesn't have zombies in it. It's got something similar to that in there. But we ended up nixing the entire blurb just because we felt that it gave away too much of the story. Like, it would lead Patterson's readers to believe that it was something that it wasn't. But I can tell you that the people over at the publishing company probably spent 2 weeks, with those like 18 words or whatever King provided, trying to come up with a creative way to string them together that didn't include the word zombies that they could still slap on a cover.
Give it to me. I can do it.
I'll send it to you after the show.
I
I should have pulled it up for this conversation. I don't have. I'm totally unorganized because I never prepare for anything.
Give it to AI. Give it to AI.
Look forward to next week. Yeah.
Give it to AI. Chat GPT could do it.
It's just quote ... quote Stephen King.
Yeah, this book, Stephen King.
Yes,
and that would work.
That would work.
Actually, that
I'm
might
totally
sell
doing
a
that.
lot of copies.
it probably would.
I mean, what it implies is that this book left Stephen King speechless. That's what it implies.
Ooh, yes.
So,
Well,
telling you, man.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with next week, Kevin.
I think it just did it. Live on air.
Live on air. Perfect.
This episode is brought to you by AutoCrit. One of the most value-packed memberships for any author, AutoCrit brings you an amazing suite of tools that make it a breeze to plan, write, and edit your books all in one place. AutoCrit takes you far above standard grammar checking or cookie cutter guidance. Instead, it's like having an experienced editor in your genre watching over your shoulder to help you deliver great writing that keeps your audience trapped in the story. You can even compare your writing style to more than 100 best-selling authors right down to the word level, so you can see what the best in the business do to keep their storytelling clean, clear, and crisp. Listeners of the Writers Inc. podcast can now take advantage of lifetime membership for one single fee. That's right, no renewal fees.
Hi, this is JD Barker. I've used AutoCrit for years, and not only has it improved my writing, but it's been a crucial tool with aspiring authors that I've mentored. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just beginning, it'll help you find your weak spots and weed them out. Give it a shot with your latest project. Trust me, your editor will thank you.
Head to autocrit.com/JD to get your lifetime membership. Big thanks to AutoCrit for sponsoring the show.
So on that note, JD, who's up this week?
This week, we've got Ryan Steck. He's the editor of one of the world's leading thriller blogs called The Real Book Spy. One hell of a writer. His latest title is called Lethal Range, and released earlier this month. Here he is, Ryan Steck.
Well, I am always happy to chat with another thriller author, Ryan. So welcome. Thank you for taking precious time to chat with us. Thank you for being here.
No, Kevin, thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
We're going to be talking about your book. This is your first thriller. This is the first book you've put out, right? Called Fields of Fire. Let's start by talking about the book a little, though. So what is, you've got such a background. I kind of want to go into a lot of things, but I want to focus on your book first. So we are hitting that nail. So tell us a little bit about the book itself.
Yeah. So Fields of Fire is about a former Marine raider named Matthew Red, who comes back to his hometown in Montana for the first time in a decade to investigate the death of his adopted father, only to uncover a global conspiracy that only he can stop. And this originated. So I've been in publishing for a long time. I've worked as a freelance editor for a long time, and I've been a critic as The Real Book Spy for a long time. I got to a point where it was like I wanted to write a book of my own. And this character, Matthew Red, I first created him in high school. 10th grade, we had the coolest intern you've ever met in your life. Her name was Shay Vandersteltwentz. She's a dear friend of mine now. And she was the intern in this English class. She gave us a creative writing assignment. And she said, do anything you want for this. You can swear. There can be violence. You can do anything. And like any, 15-year-old, if you give me an inch, I'm going to take it 18 miles.
Right.
And so I was like, man, we get to swear. We get to do action. And so I went home, and a lot of my friends were blowing this off, trying to just have fun doing these things. And I found myself taking it very seriously. All these things that we do now as novelists, set the scene and nail the hooks and your transitions and show before you tell. All these things I was just trying to do on my own back then as a 15-year-old. And I did this short story about a kid named Matthew Red, who's a teenage vigilante who protects his school when some killers come to attack the school. Okay. Now, I didn't know it was a peer-to-peer assignment. So I can still remember the poor kid. His name is Trenton Hearn. he had to read mine out loud, and he kept stopping. Like, he didn't know if he should read this because it was so violent and so much swearing. And so he gets through it. And then the very next day I get called down to the principal's office. The superintendent was there. My parents were there, the principal, vice principal, and my teacher and the intern. And they were like, this is so over the top. And my parents were really the type of parents, like, if you get in trouble at school, you're in trouble at home.
Right.
So I was scared, man. And the intern really, Shay stuck up for me and was like, he did the assignment. And so my parents really, for the first time ever, like, were like, look, he doesn't deserve to be in trouble. And they were like, yeah, the superintendent was like, yeah, I hear you. This is too over the top. You're suspended for a week. So the reason this is like the story that I tell is that principal is now my kid's principal. And I love to see him and tell him that, like, hey, Maddie Red got me a week off school and a book deal. So it all worked out. You know, I revisited this character. You know, when you grow up, I have 6 kids. My wife and I, we share 6 kids together, and married life, parenthood, all these things change you. And I found myself wondering, with like armed with this new perspective on life, what would this hero be up to today? What would he look like as an adult? And like I said, I worked on thrillers, I covered thrillers, and I just thought, I want to explore this story. And that's where Fields of Fire came from.
That is one of the best character origin stories I have ever heard someone tell, Ryan. What is that story? Is the short story itself the original? Is it still around? Did you do anything with it?
Yeah, I have it somewhere. It's so bad. I would never put it out there. Like,
you've got to do something with it, man. I mean, everybody shows their warts at some point.
I thought about editing it. You know, I did think about like doing that and maybe, you know, putting it out one day. I don't know.
I'll tell you what you do.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what you do. Don't edit it. Publish it as is, but put commentary throughout. Yeah. And tell the story you just told. Yeah.
It's not a bad idea, man.
Man, I would do it. That's exactly what I remember reading. Piers Anthony did a book called But What of Earth, and it was a manuscript that just got shredded by like 10 different editors as it got sold between one house and another. And he did that. And I've always wanted to do that, but I think you've got a golden opportunity. So
it's interesting you say that, because like I started writing Fields of Fire about 7 years ago, and originally it was a completely different book. And my agent, John Talbot, who, bless him, because he's been with me for a long time, and he's earned his keep along the way. Let me tell you that, man. But he kind of said to me at the time, originally, and this has nothing to do with the book as it is today, but originally it was going to be more about human trafficking. And he just said to me, I don't think the publishers want to buy that because they don't think people want to read about it.
Yeah.
So at the time, he was like, just go take that out and put something else in. And that sounds really simple, but like, you're a writer, you know, it's not that simple.
Yeah.
So when I sat down, I'm like, sure, let me just take out the whole plot and just put a new one in there. No, you have to completely rewrite the book. And it's not even the same book. The Fields of Fire that exists today is, I could literally take the original manuscript, just change the names and probably publish it now, and you would never know. It is completely different. I have thought about doing that. I have thought about putting out.
You should totally do that.
Yeah, the original draft. But the one that's out today, I'm really, really proud of. And it's the first in a series. It came out in hardcover last September. The paperback just came out. And book 2, Lethal Range, comes out August 8th. And they just re-upped me for like 2 more books and a short story. So I'm really excited to get to do this.
Yeah, so it must be doing very well. I mean, they've got a lot of confidence in you.
I've really been blessed. Like I said, Red, I got a week off school and a couple book deals out of him.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's been a pretty fun journey, that is for sure.
I can tell you for absolute certain that nothing I ever got suspended over has resulted in some sort of career move for me. Not so far. Perhaps if I get into like petty larceny or You'll become a con man or something. So that's fantastic.
Well, it's dangerous because, again, I have 6 kids and I'm always worried that one of them is going to do something at school and get suspended and be like, Dad, you can't be mad. I might get a career out of this one day. You never know,
It's a different world now, though.
Oh, it's so different now. Yeah.
And then now, if you were to have written that in school now, like you might have been flagged as like a domestic terrorist or something.
You would never come back to that school. I'm almost positive. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I laugh about that, but that's nothing to laugh about, honestly. But so
it's true, though.
And then you've got it sounds like at least 3 more books kind of coming down the pike. That's cool. Let's talk a little bit about the process then. The first book is always a different challenge than the second book.
Yeah.
And then 3 and 4 are always much bigger challenges than the second book. So what's the writing process been like for you? Like what did you learn from book 1 that you're going to apply to book 2?
So there's the saying in our industry, you have your whole life to write your first book. You have 1 year to write your second. You work forever on this book, then you get a book deal, and then you got to produce the next one within the next year.
Yeah.
So I knew that going into, again, I've worked as a freelance editor with a lot of really talented authors for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned about me was that when it comes to me as an editor versus me as an author, it turns out I'm like the world's biggest hypocrite. So I as an editor, I tell all my clients, like, hey, you need to have like a thorough outline. Let's map this out. Let's talk about it. Let's have an idea of where the story's going. Let's have this arc. How does it go to the next book?
Mm-hmm.
But me as the writer, I don't do any of that. Like, right. I really just can't. And in fact, when I started working on book 2, my agent said, hey, you got to, turn in an outline. And I said, yeah, I don't think I don't really do outlines. And he said, like, you have a pretty big payment tied to that. So you might want to, turn that thing in. And I didn't even know. So I was like, oh, shoot, so I don't do like a chapter by chapter outline at all. I can't do that. Like, my brain doesn't work. That as an editor, I can oversee you doing that, right? I can help you do that. I can't do that for me. So I usually do like a 4 to 6 page treatment, and I write the epilogue first. All my books have an epilogue. I write that first. So once I know where that story ends,
mm-hmm.
I can go back to the beginning and just write until I get to that point, and then I know I'm done. And okay. That's really my style on this. I don't think it would work for everyone, but I signed my book deal. Things were going really fast.
Yeah.
And there was so much to do to get Fields of Fire off the ground that by the time we started talking about book 2, this was like October 2021, and it was due June 1st, 2022.
Yeah.
So I finally got like the approval from the publisher, like, hey, we like this, outline, go ahead and write this book. And I wrote part of like October, but November, December, January. And then I edited for like a week and I turned it in February 1st. And I felt like I had to do that because there was such a gap between writing Fields of Fire and then Lethal Range that I was like, I really hope I remember how to be an author and I can do this,
Right.
So I did, but then looking back, it was not the smartest thing. I finished that book February of last year,
mm-hmm.
and I wasn't under contract. So I was like, well, I won't start a new book because I don't even know if they'll approve it,
Yeah.
So we waited. Fields of Fire came out in September, and then my agent, got some sales numbers and we started negotiating. And I signed a new book deal like December 23rd. And that next book 3, was due June 1st this year. So I was like, man, I got to stop doing this to myself. This is like, I have no time.
Yeah.
So I had no life. I wrote all of January, February, March, April, half of May, edited, and I turned it in 2 weeks early. And now I'm like, I should probably learn from that and just start writing the next one. It'll be due like June 1st next year.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I think I'll just get ahead of that one and start writing it now,
Yeah. 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 I think I would. I mean, just to keep it from being that's kind of a crunch and it affects the decisions you make, right? Was there any?
Oh, yeah.
Was there anything you did in that made in book 2 that you would have done differently had you had more time?
Well, thankfully, honestly, no, because my philosophy is, and my publisher wouldn't probably love me saying it, but I don't work for them. I work for the readers, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in my mind, I would just be late. If I had to be like, I would tell them it's not ready. I think in today's economy, someone's going to spend $28 on a hardcover. I want to be able to look them in the eye and say, look, I can't promise that you'll love it, but I promise you I gave it everything I had.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I truly tried my best. That is so important to me. And then, you know, even more than money, time. Like, you can always make more money. You can't get time back. Someone's going to sit down and on average, you know, 10 to 12 hours to read a full-length novel. Well, that's time they don't get back. And I want to make it worth your time and worth your money. So thankfully, no, there was nothing in there that I would go back and put in now. Lethal Range, again, that's out August 8th. That was the book I always wanted to write. Fields of Fire had to come first because it sets it up.
Yeah.
But I'm having that discussion right now on book 3 because I got it done pretty quickly. And I have to sit back and look and go, is there anything I want to add to this, you know? But no, so far I've been fortunate. I can kind of look back at my books and feel like it was the story I wanted to tell. Whether or not you like that, you know, that's up to the reader. But I gave it everything I got, and I'm proud of them. So
yeah, and I think in the end, I mean, that's really what it's all about. If you can't be proud of the work, and if the readers are going to hate it, it doesn't matter how fat the check is. I mean, that would be your last check, really.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I feel so blessed and lucky to get to do this. And for me, because I was an editor for so long, and because I still do editing, not as often, not very much, but I still do. And I still am a book spy. I still run therealbookspy.com.
Yeah.
I had that imposter syndrome where I didn't feel like an author. You know, you sign the book deal, your book doesn't come out for a year. And I always tell people when I'd meet new people and they'd say like, hey, Ryan, what do you do for a living?
Yeah.
I would sound like Ron Burgundy in Anchorman when he says his name, but there's the question mark at the end. And they're like, who put the question mark? So that would be like, I'm an author, you know? And my wife one day was like, you got to stop saying it like it's a question, you know? But I don't feel like no one knows that book's out yet. They can't, you know, they're going to like look me up and it's like, oh, that book's not even out yet. And I really struggled because you wear that editorial hat, you wear that critic hat. And it's like, when do I become an author? And I don't think I truly felt like an author until a few months back. You know, we got sales figures and I was like, wow, people are reading this, and you look at the reviews and people like it. And I've got this next book coming out and I just turned in book 3 and it's like, I think this might be my job now. And I feel so thankful that I get to do that, you know?
Yeah. That is, it's a weird feeling, you know,
it
like
really
you get
is.
to that sort of realization that, cause I don't know if you were like this, maybe you were. I mean, when I was in like high school or whatever, and I'd read a novel by someone I really liked, you know, I had this picture of them in my head, and it was never the like smoker's jacket, you know, long pipe guy. It was always the, I don't know. I just had this, everyone always wore a blazer. That was the rule. Writers wear blazers, and they live in castles that they imported to the United States, you know, stone by stone. You know, it was always those guys.
Yeah.
I haven't yet built my castle, so
same. I likewise do not live in a castle. Yeah.
So now, what do you think? Which of the hats do you like better? Because you've been an editor for years, and now you're an author. Which of those two kind of, you know, puts coffee in your veins every morning?
Being a writer. Yeah. Being the author. I would think the easiest job is being a critic.
Yeah.
Running the books by being a critic. That is the easiest one because there's no responsibility for me, right? When you're the editor, you got to help make this the best version of that story that author wants to tell. When you're the author, you've got to try to get the story that lives in your head out on paper. And that's so wild, right? When you really think about it.
Yeah.
It is so much easier to be the critic and just read these books and then tell you what I think about them. And it is infinitely harder and scarier to be the writer. I never appreciated the vulnerability an author feels when they publish works and they put them out there. I used to have writers tell me as a book spy, they're like, man, I'm so nervous. I hope you love it. And I'm like, no, they're probably just saying that to sound nice. They don't really I'd be nervous, I'm so nervous every time my book goes out for review. I can't sleep. I can't eat. And I become friends with a lot of the authors that I cover, and they all realized, they could have a lot of fun with me as I transition from critic to author. So that awkward stage where you have to ask other writers for blurbs, like, hey, would you endorse, my novel? I think every single person except for 2 that we asked sent me a fake blurb first just to mess with me. So I'd get one and it would be like, the book is okay, don't buy it, just get it from the library. And I was like, oh my gosh, they hated it. And then I'd get an email 30 seconds later that was like, ha ha, just kidding, here's the real blurb, great job, man, you really crushed this, love it, keep it going. Yeah. And I was just I was just filled with anxiety. It's so much harder to put yourself out there. At the same time, as an author, it is so rewarding. Yeah.
I'm not gonna name this person because I don't want them getting flack, but I remember getting a blurb from a very popular author, and it said, this book is great. It's the literary equivalent of asparagus pea. And he waited a full 24 hours before sending me anything nicer.
Oh, it's brutal, man. It's so brutal. It's just brutal.
So what is it, what, as an editor and as an author, what have you learned from the first skill that helped you with the second?
Well, it's what's interesting is when you're an editor, you don't have any control.
Yeah.
You have the ability to suggest things. You have the ability to say, what if you went in this direction? What if you did this? What if you did that? But ultimately, you work for the writer. So it's up to them. And there was certainly a part of me that was like, man, I do feel like over the years, I've had some good ideas that writers, for one reason or another, didn't want to use.
Yeah.
And I 100% respect that, because I don't listen to my editor all the time, right? But I don't want it to become my story, but that really did make me want to sit down and write my own story, want to be in control for once. All the stuff that I would do that, they might not want to do, I want to get the shot to see what that looks like, And certainly you work on a lot of these things. You start to understand the structure. How do you structure, 3 acts? How do you, what does it mean to set the scene? How do you nail transitions? Things like that you have a lot more experience with. And then being a critic, I felt like I had a pretty good understanding of what readers like. And I think that's really important. Again, I look at it as, and Brad Thor says this all the time, I work for the readers, and I feel the same way. You add out, no author has a job if people don't read their book. And so I want to deliver something that you like, that keeps you up all night long, that you can't put down. And for sure, I think being a critic, being an editor really helped me discover what those things are, and then how to write in a way that will hopefully achieve that.
Yeah. You really are coming at this with all the perspectives. That's interesting. I mean, all of us come at it from the reader perspective in one form or another, but you're the professional reader, so you
it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because I was like, man, I really hope this book doesn't suck, because everyone's going to expect that I would know what a good book looks like. Yes. But that upped the pressure a little bit. It did, I won't lie. But I also wanted to do something that isn't like anything I've worked on. It isn't anything I've covered. And my 2 favorite authors in the whole world is Vince Flynn and his Mitch Rapp series. Yeah. Vince Flynn made me a fan of this genre.
Yeah.
And then CJ Box is my favorite living author. Vince, may rest in peace, no longer with us. Kyle Mills done a brilliant job with the Mitch Rapp series. Now my buddy Don Bentley's taking that over. But CJ Box and his Joe Pickett series
Yeah.
made me want to be a writer.
Yeah.
And I'm a character in that series, by the way.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm like a mega fan of his, and he found that out years ago and nearly gave me a heart attack. I was reading Vicious Circle, and you meet Deputy Ryan Steck, and I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe it. I actually had pneumonia at the time, and it like took my breath away. I was like sick, propped up in a chair.
Like
and
literally.
I was like, my wife couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, and I was like, I'm in this book. I cannot believe it. And
That's amazing. Yeah.
and he blurbed Fields of Fire. You talk about like a dream come true. He's on the cover,
I see it.
you know, and it's like, those guys, those giants, you know, literary giants, were very influential to me. And I like to say that Fields of Fire is a cross between Vince Flynn meets CJ Box.
Okay. That is that's high. That's rarefied air right there. That's good.
Well, we don't see those characters out west, right?
Right.
So Matthew Redd is a 6'3.5", 265 pounds of muscle Marine Raider. I liken him to a sledgehammer in a scalpel's world. And when you have big characters do big things, I like heavyweights. I think readers, viewers like heavyweights. And I wanted this big dude that could go home and, you know, realize something is up with the death of his adopted father and want to get to the bottom of it. And so it just kind of one day dawned on me, like, where does he go home to? And when I picked Montana, there was a lot of reasons, but I've never worked on anything in Montana. I don't cover a lot of books in Montana. And we don't see Mitch Rapp in Montana. We don't see Jason Bourne in Montana, you know?
Right.
And that landscape lends itself really well to these types of books when you have this character who's supposed to be this badass hero. And truly, when you're out west, you call 911, you are at best maybe hours from getting help. Yeah. Sometimes worse, sometimes days. It just heightens everything, you know? Right. And the more I thought about it, I was like, that's exactly what I need for this series. And so yeah, I wanted to go somewhere that you probably have read characters like Matthew Redd, but I don't think you've seen them in this kind of an environment. Yeah. It's kind of like if I don't know. The first impression I got was like if you put like Reacher in the middle of Montana, it would be that sort of story. But maybe with more violence, I'm thinking. Sounds like sounds like there's a proclivity for violence. Well, he's a big guy, you know? Yeah. A lot of people ask me, they're like, Ryan, are you Matthew Redd? And I'm like, oh, no, I think my wife probably wishes I looked more like Matthew Redd. No, I promise you, I'm not 265 ripped with muscle and 6'3.5. But I think he does a lot of things that I might do, or certainly says things that I might say if I were his size. Yeah. And I'm a big fan of Jack Reacher. There's no doubt about it. I do want action. You know, CJ Box's books there's action in them, but I wanted to bring the action that you'd find from Jack Reacher, Vince Flynn, and put it in this type of a book. And I will tell you, I referenced Lethal Range out in August. Like, that was the book I always wanted to write. When I turned that thing in, Kevin, they were like, my publisher was like, hey, just like a heads up, this book is almost all action. We just wanted to make sure you knew that. And I was like, oh, yeah, no, I knew that. I did that on purpose. That one is, I really went for it with that book. And I can't wait to hear what readers think of that one. Yeah. So you said that you write the epilogue first. So, and then it sounds like you're not much of a outliner usually, which is interesting for an editor to admit. Oh, I know, man, but like that, I know. I just embrace, like, I just tell people, like, it truly is very hypocritical. To this day, if someone were to call me, I'm still doing some editing. If someone called me or emailed me and said, hey, Brian, could you have a look? You know, even new author, I work with a lot of new authors. I would still tell them, you've got to outline. It's so important and so critical. And I think it is. I really do believe that. Unfortunately, my brain is just not wired that way. I can't do it on my own stuff. And same. Yeah. I also can't just sit down and write. I really envy the writers who are like, you know, I'll wake up, get coffee, and I'll just go write. That is not my life. I spend more time thinking about what I'm going to write than I do writing. So I'll usually write like 2 or 3 hours a day in the evening. And I can't write that scene that chapter until I can see it in my head like a movie. And once I know what I'm going to write, I can go do it. Yeah. So I spend a lot of time working it out in my head, thinking about it. And then it's like, oh, you know what? I can see this. Like, now I'll go write it. And so I aim for a chapter a day, 2,000 words or so, 1,500 to 2,000 words a day. But I cannot put them on paper until I see it in my head.
That is really interesting to me. I mean, you know, I'm the discovery writer. You know, I sit down and I start writing. I'm trying to think of the name of it's not aphasia, but I just learned about this, that there are people who can't visualize, like they don't see, like if I say picture a red apple
too. From my buddy Connor Sullivan. His wife has this condition. Yeah. That's wild.
And it's not aphasia, but it's something similar to that. But yeah, and so I kind of wonder if there's something like that because what you said makes sense to me. Like you think out the story first and then you write it. That makes sense. You're building it, you know, there's a structure there. But then I do sit down and just write, and I couldn't possibly picture the story. I mean, I'll get inspiration for a scene or something, but like, I can't mentally map out that whole story and then write it. So I wonder if there's like a thing.
I just take it chapter by chapter. Like when I write myself into a corner a lot, and I'll get done writing and I'm like, oof, you know, that's going to be a problem for tomorrow, you know, and I go to bed thinking like
Ryan's problem.
It really is. And I go to bed thinking that, but like, you know, you have to send updates to your publisher as you go. And I will tell you, writing book 3, we did an editorial call with Tyndale, and I really have the best team there. Karen Watson and Jan Staub are amazing. And Sarah Risky is my editor. She's the most talented editor I've ever worked. I would hire her over me in a heartbeat. She is amazing. And they were like, man, we can't wait to see how you get read out of everything in this one. And I just kept thinking to myself, like, me too. I hope I can figure it out, you know? But I will tell you, the benefit to doing it this way is I don't really have rewrites. When the book's done, it's usually pretty clean. It's quick editing, you know? I think when people are more of like a pantser and they just kind of sit and write and explore to write, I can tell you as an editor, I find that we cut a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot then that we don't need, right? I don't know if that's true for you and your writing, but that's been my experience working with people like that, is that story is in there, but we can trim some of those words out and it's even better.
Yeah.
I really haven't had to do that, thankfully, because I'm not really exploring it on the page. I'm exploring it mentally in my imagination, and then I just go write that. And it just seems to kind of work for me. I will say I did an interview last year and I told that story, and I had an aspiring author send me an email that was like, WTF, how does that even work for you? I just tried this. I'm getting nowhere. And I felt so bad because I'm like, you know, I don't think that does work for everyone, but I think that's what makes every writer unique, is you have to find what works for you.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It's an interesting business because it's, you know, you're definitely broadcasting your thoughts to an audience, you know, that's the end game. But it's still a very personal thing. You know,
it's
really
like, is.
Yeah.
And no two successful authors do it the same. I mean, like Stephen King writes a draft in 2 months. It takes George R.R. Martin 12 years. You know, like no two writers do this the same way. And I think that's a really important thing for authors to admit, to help the next wave of writers coming up, you know, that like, how do they do it? Well, trust me, they just do what works. We just do what works for us. And I think you got to give yourself the freedom to explore that if you want to write.
I absolutely agree. Well, all right, we're going to have to wrap up. I have a final question for you.
Sure.
All right. So someone famous, a spectacularly famous writer has passed, and you're getting the Brandon Sanderson tap on the shoulder. What author do you most want to pick up the torch for?
Oof. It's you know, that's
Can
tough.
You believe I just thought of that off the cuff, like right this second?
It's well, listen, there's a very natural answer here. If anyone knows anything about my coming into the industry, I started as a big fan of Mitch Rapp and have created a Mitch Rapp fan site. Kyle Mills has done a brilliant job, like I said, stepping in for Vince Flynn. And now Don Bentley. So I'm not like advocating for the gig because I want Don and to be successful, and I love Kyle, but I think, you know, Vince Flynn and the Mitch Rapps. And my youngest son's name is Mitchell, by the way, after Mitch Rapp. And not only is it Mitchell, his name is Mitchell Ryan, because I was determined to put a Mitch and a Ryan together. That's a true story.
That's great.
But another one that'd be very near and dear to my heart is a guy that I worked with for a very long time, Ted Bell, his Alex Hawk series. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but 12 New York Times bestsellers. He passed away in January. And that's one that I feel like it would be such a tremendous honor, you know, to do something like that. So those are probably my two answers if I'm allowed to. Vince Flynn or Ted Bell.
This episode is sponsored by the book marketing experts at Written Word Media. They know that marketing your book can be a challenge, and that's why they make marketing simple by providing quick, easy, and effective ways to promote your books. When you schedule a promotion with Written Word Media, your book is emailed to tens of thousands of readers who love your genre. It's exposure that's hard to find any other way. You can even choose a ready-made promo stack that includes multiple promos over a short period of time to help boost your title's rank on retailers like Amazon. The best part? Scheduling your promo only takes 5 minutes and comes with world-class customer service. Over 30,000 authors trust Written Word Media with their book marketing. See why at writtenwordmedia.com today.
I first want to say Ryan I love Ryan. This is the first time I'd gotten to talk to him. It's not going to be the last. He and I kind of palled around after the interview for a while. He was a lot of fun to talk to. So I got a whole list of questions here, but I'm going to pick one at random. What was your that's the author life vision before you knew the reality of the business?
You know, I've been in this business for so long. Like I've kind of known what it's about. I've known it's never been the you know, the author in the cabin with the typewriter, you know, pounding out the manuscript to me. I know better.
A friend of mine that I worked with was working on his PhD dissertation. He was sick of writing, so he just wrote a post-apocalyptic book. This is like in 2011, kind of like the Kindle Gold Rush days. And he really didn't have it edited. The front cover wasn't all that great. And he made 10 grand within like 6 months. And a very you know, the story was good, but you know, he was getting killed in the reviews. It's like, yeah, learn to spell, you know, blah, blah, all this other stuff. And I looked at my wife and I'm just like, I can do that. So I just thought all you had to do is just, you know, whip something together and throw it up there and, you know, you're rolling in dough. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
That's how
I
it goes,
guess
right?
I don't have that good of an imagination. What is that? You say you can't visualize things, aphantasia. I think I have that.
I still don't remember what that.
Whatever the affliction was. Yes.
It's aphantasia. That's what.
Aphantasia.
Ask the neuropsychologist. I know all the A words.
There you go.
But yeah, I'm like, I never really thought about it. I just write like in the chair. That's for me what the author life is being in my chair writing.
I think I did picture, I don't know. It's hard to really describe what it was I was picturing as a kid. I always thought of authors as living in normal places, normal houses or whatever, but just like surrounded by, I don't know, Arcania, you know, just,
oak.
and I think a lot of us probably are, but like, a lot of oak.
Their pipe in their smoking jacket.
Yeah.
I think I
patches
probably
on his elbows, you know,
smoking a pipe. Yeah. Actually, you know what I pictured was Chevy Chase in Funny Farm. That's what I pictured. Just sitting at a window, looking out over my, you know, my personal farm I've purchased. You know, I think I kind of pictured that, and in a way, I kind of have that now, but did not have that for most of my career. What's the worst experience any of you have ever had with editors?
This hasn't happened to me. I've got a friend who was I think on book number 8 of a series, all New York Times bestsellers, turned in the latest book, and then her editor got let go. And that book ended up in limbo at the publisher, and to this day still hasn't been released. This is like probably 10 years ago.
Yikes.
The way that works is the editor is the one who signed the book. If another editor is not willing to pick it up, you're still under contract with that publisher, but the book never actually releases. The closest I've ever come to that is HMH owned my the first couple books of my 4MK series, and HarperCollins bought HMH, and my editor went along for the ride basically for a month or so after the takeover, and then she was let go along with a bunch of other people. But they gave me another editor at that point. But that's probably the scariest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I haven't had a bad experience with an editor, but I've heard of that too. I had a friend whose editor left, got a new editor with book 4, and the editor was like, well, yeah, we want you to take out all these characters who are like the main characters in the whole arc of till book 6. So he didn't make those changes, needless to say, but yeah.
See, I've been lucky. I've had nothing but good luck with editors. They've been very frank. I like an editor that does not pull punches, and became fast friends with them. It worked out really well.
So right at the beginning of the interview, Ryan was talking about the sort of bad thing he wrote that ended up getting him booted out of school for a week, but also led to his writing contract, which I love. I love that story. But was there anything that any of you wrote in school that you got in trouble for?
I didn't get in trouble for this. I had English was probably like the only class I actually enjoyed. And our teacher, I think our assignment one day was to write a stream of consciousness story. So like my entire stream of consciousness thing, like, everybody, wrote their homework like the night before. Like I literally wrote mine like while she was picking up the papers, walking around the room, picking them up. And my stream of consciousness story was basically me sitting at my desk, writing my stream of consciousness story as the teacher was walking around picking up the other papers, knowing that there was a ticking clock. And like halfway through the page, like the ink in my pen dried out and I had to grab another pen from somebody else. But like that was the story that I turned in, and I managed to pound out a page, and she still gave me an A on it because it basically covered the assignment. But I always had fun with that kind of thing. I've never actually gotten in trouble for writing something, not that I know of.
That's extreme sports right there, though, doing your homework when it's due. Like I like that.
Oh, always. Yeah. Either the class before or,
Yes.
like beginning of class.
Yep.
My books never went home with me.
Yep.
Yeah,
Me too.
Same.
I never got in trouble for anything because they never caught me for vandalizing the bathroom and stuff like that. So it's fine.
Wow.
What?
Okay.
Was that an admission?
Yeah, no.
On video?
Statute of limitations
Absolutely
has
not.
run out.
It has run out. Yeah, unless you kill someone, you're covered. You're all right.
Yeah. I had a similar story, JD, because when I was in a speech class, we were supposed to write a speech about the voice of democracy. And I forgot about the assignment like until literally the day it's due. We all drew numbers for who's going first to read their speech into a tape recorder to enter it into a contest. And I was number 2. And so we had the opportunity to do a little quick adjustment, quote unquote, to our speech. So I literally sat while the first person was reading theirs in a 5-minute period or 10-minute period and wrote mine. And then I did the reading. As soon as I was done, ink was still wet on the page. I did the reading. A couple of weeks later, I got informed that I'd won first place in that competition and got a scholarship to college out of it.
Wow.
My favorite not me story is we had to read poetry out loud. And this person did not get in trouble for it in high school, but it was awesome. Just stood up and spit some LL Cool J lyrics, and the teacher thought it was great. So it
Nice.
was fantastic.
You're going on to the next round.
Exactly.
So have any of you ever been a character in anyone else's books? And I mean, other than the ones that I'm writing about each of you?
I have not. Ryan is a character in one of mine, and I honestly, I don't even remember which one I actually put him in. For those of you that out there, if you haven't checked out Real Books By, you want to check out his website because he has been doing this forever. He literally knows everybody in the industry, and he's kind of like Kenny on South Park, where everybody just kind of drops him into their book, and you sort of stumble into it. And I saw his name in somebody else's book the other day, and I don't remember who it was. It might have been Nick Cutter. But yeah, like he pops up all the time in
That's
books.
funny. That's funny.
I love that. I have not been a character, but you know that I write serial fiction under a pen name. So my pen name has been in multiple other Vellas on Kindle Vella, and we've done that for each other, put each other in our serials. So that's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
I don't know that if I've been a character in someone else's book. I think someone once told me that they mentioned my name in one of their novels or something. But I did do in my first thriller novel, because I was writing it as a dare from Nick Thacker. I did include in the opening scene, there's a guy reading a Nick Thacker novel in that book. So he's now canon in my Dan Kotler thriller universe. But I can't recall if someone's ever put me into one of their books, which doesn't bode well for the quality of the book, I guess.
They clearly need better character development.
They need better character development. Yeah.
Kevin, you are a character. I think that's the way I see it.
Well, I'm a character in all my. I should just start telling people that I'm kind of like Hitchcock, or Stan Lee or something. Like in every book, there's a Kevin.
A little cameo.
He just isn't always named.
Oh, that's perfect. All right. So with that, JD, who's up next week?
Next week, we've got Kashuar Kabushani. I probably totally butchered that name. He was born in Van Nuys, California. During his childhood, he spent some time in Iran and then returned to L.A., studied philosophy prior to completing his MFA. His first book is called We'll Greet the Sun Again, and just recently came out. So he's going to be here to tell us about it.
Sounds great. If you'd like to be notified as soon as new episodes publish, make sure you go to writersincpodcast.com and sign up now. We'll see you next episode and have a great week of writing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Writers Inc. Access the show notes and leave a comment at writersincpodcast.com.